Oh, if you could hear the conversation in the break.
Definitely don't want to.
Ivanka Trump is closing her namesake fashion company to turn her focus to long-term policy making. She says Ivanka stepped away from the company's management and operations in 2017 to avoid potential ethics violations, but had retained her ownership through a trust. The first daughter plans to continue filing trademark applications on her name after the company is shuttered. Despite soaring sales leading up to the 2016 presidential election, the brand became a lightning rod for critics of her father's policies, facing boycotts, deteriorating sales, and being dropped from major retailers like Nordstrom, Neiman Marcus, and Hudson's Bay. Let's bring in MSNBC's Stephanie Ruhle. She's got her show coming up in 26 minutes, but she came in a little early for us. Steph, what more can you tell us about this?
So to say Ivanka's business was failing and that's why she shut it down is a bridge too far. You saw companies in metropolitan areas, stores stop carrying her stuff, but then you also saw a lot of stores in the Southeast pick them up. One of the things that she faced that was a problem, they couldn't expand internationally. It wasn't an option for them. Now, we could criticize her all day long saying, well, why is she doing it? Look at it cynically. Or I'm going to say, at the very least, take this at face value. Every day we hammer Ivanka Trump, you have a conflict of interest. You run a business. You're the only one who owns the business. It makes no sense. She's shutting it down. We should take it and move on.
Is it not the case there's some controversy over some connection between her businesses and China and some of the actions that President Trump has taken there?
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
There definitely is. And there's issues around. She sat next to Xi Jinping at Mar-a-Lago the same night she got 13 new trademarks. Absolutely.
Okay.
There are issues around it, and we can continue to ask. But there are bigger issues that are a threat to the American people. We hammer her constantly and say, I cannot believe you still have your company. Now she doesn't. And now maybe we can say to her, great, Ivanka, you're in the White House full time. I'm pretty sure you were focused on the advancement of women and girls. How about reunification of those kids?
Well, she said she's going to do long-term policy making because she's had so much success at it so far.
So right now she feels like she does. She takes credit. And if you talk to other people who actually worked on tax reform, they don't back that up, but she likes to say she was involved in tax policy. She's working on parental leave, and she was the one who sort of chaired this workforce development effort. Now, we still don't know where these workforce programs are coming from or where they're getting paid, but she feels like she's getting bipartisan support. My takeaway is, if you thought Jared and Ivanka were coming back to New York in September, they're not. They're there to stay.
To your point, we said that the day that the family reunification story broke, the separation story broke, she should be on a plane down to the border that day. Actually, it was Melania who got on a plane and made a couple of visits. Do you think Ivanka will step into that? I mean, she has to some extent, but not enough.
The only thing we heard from her on this, when the president signed the executive order to reverse his own zero tolerance policy, she thanked and congratulated him and said, now it's Congress's term. Well, excuse me, Ms. Trump, absolutely not. There are families, there are parents that have now been deported. They are not eligible to come back, and we have those children here. So even if you said this is not a humanitarian or a heartstrings issue, make it a policy, a fiscal issue. We're not going to have those adults who would be here contributing to our economy and potentially paying taxes, but instead we now have those children without their families, and we have to house them, clothe them, feed them, and give them an education. None of it makes sense from a policy perspective, and if she says she's somebody who wants to focus on policy and women and girls, be my guest. We need it.
Are you saying that Ivanka Trump now has no conflicts of interest when it comes to her government job?
Absolutely not. Remember, she is still a key person in the Trump organization. Ivanka was the one who led the project for the hotel in Washington, D.C. She and Jared have made tens of millions of dollars. So to say she's conflict-free is nonsense. But as far as her business, her namesake brand goes, she shut it down. Let's take it.
All right, we want your business brand in this story as well. The president's been talking trade this morning, firing off several tweets on the matter. He writes, every time I see a weak politician asking to stop trade talks or the use of tariffs to counter unfair tariffs, I wonder, what can they be thinking? Are we just going to continue and let our farmers and country get ripped off? Lost $817 billion on trade last year. No weakness. He continued, when you have people snipping at your heels, he writes, during a negotiation, it will only take longer to make a deal, and the deal will never be as good as it could have been with unity. Negotiations are going really well. Be cool. The end result will be worth it. He concluded, China is targeting our farmers, who they know I love and respect, as a way of getting me to continue allowing them to take advantage of the U.S. They are being vicious in what will be their failed attempt. We were being nice until now. China made $517 billion on us last year. Okay, let's...
And so that I say, Mr. Trump, when you say he wonders what are they thinking, every business person, every political leader, every political historian, and any economist I speak to says, what are you thinking? And we have to remember, during the campaign, when Jared Kushner was tasked with finding an economic advisor whose views mirrored those of the president, he found Peter Navarro, who by any credible economist standards is considered a wackadoo in an Amazon search.
And so, Stephanie, you had even his chief economic advisor, Larry Kudlow, who you know well, in March of this year was on TV, was writing op-eds railing against tariffs, saying tariffs are taxes. There's never a happy ending to a tariff story. Now he's sitting at the right hand of the president. What must he be thinking?
He's on CBS this morning rolling the media that the president needs him to, saying President Trump didn't cause this problem. He inherited it. He's right that we have a trade issue with places like China when you're talking about intellectual property. And that's why you engage in treaties like TPP or TPP-IP with Europe. What the president is doing now is pure nonsense. And when he's spreading around saying, I'm going to help the farmers using a Depression-era tactic at a time when he claims our economy is the greatest era, well, what's going to happen when fishermen say, well, this is affecting the seafood industry, oil and gas, manufacturing? Today, GM said they've lost $1 billion because commodity prices are up. You know what commodities are? Steel and aluminum.
Can I ask just two simpler questions, just for anybody who's at home who's reading these tweets? When he talks about the $817 billion that we lost on trade, first of all, I know if I ask you, did we lose $870 million on trade, you'll say, it's absurd.
A trade deficit.
But put that aside. What is that $817 billion? What is that number even attached to?
A trade deficit and a budget deficit are two different things. Well, and when the president blames all of this on the Chinese government, on the other side is the U.S. consumer. Right. And the U.S. consumer made a decision years ago that we love cheap stuff and we want it now. That's how Walmart and Amazon became the most powerful companies out there.
But even a budget deficit, if the parallel was a budget deficit, it would mean we were losing the amount of the budget deficit to ourselves. It makes no sense. But what is that $817 billion? What is that number?
He's pulling this number out. I don't know. That's not even the trade.
That's not the trade deficit even of last year.
I don't know where he's getting that specific number from. But the numbers don't make sense. And when he throws this at the American people or his base, they start to say, "Well, look, we're getting ripped off." Not in that regard.
Stephanie, is the president rattled? Is he off his game?
I can't say.
So he has advisors who know that the United States has tariffs of its own, that the United States subsidizes some industries in a way that other countries believe is tantamount to a tariff or an unfair tax on their products. He knows, or they know, that those BMWs he complains about, those SUVs, are made in South Carolina. Can they not tell him these things, or does he refuse to believe these things? Or
they can, and when those who realize they cannot change the president's mind eventually leave the building. Remember specifically when Gary Cohn left the administration. It was days after Trump surprisingly announced that meeting with steel and aluminum CEOs when Wilbur Ross and Peter Navarro snuck their way into the White House off the schedule the day we knew Hope Hicks was leaving. That's when people like Gary Cohn said, I cannot do any good here. This guy can't see straight.
Steph, you have 17 minutes before your show. You have to go get ready.
Wait, you don't think this is
No,
ready?
That's ready. I'm talking about the content.
Thanks, Billy.
That's always ready, Steph. Always ready.
Great,
Stephanie Ruhle, thank you
sweet.
very much. We'll see you in a minute. Coming up, the president is reacting on Twitter to that newly released recording where he discusses a payment involving a former Playboy model. Just now tweeting, suggesting there are more tapes, including conversations with reporters. We will talk about that next. But first...
So to be clear, Mr. Trump has no financial relationships with any Russian oligarchs.
That's what he said. That's what I said. That's obviously what our position is.
That was Paul Manafort 2 years ago this Friday, responding to questions about Donald Trump and Russia. The president's former campaign chairman soon will be going to trial, and that's only part of the legal web ensnaring the president's team. We'll talk about that next on Morning Joe.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.